Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start our Saturday Yog Darshan class with some prayers first. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Om Bhurvasvaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimai, Diyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. अस्तो मा सद्गम्य तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गम्य मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गम्य ओम सहना भवतु सहना भुनक्तु सवीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ओम शांति शांति शांति. As we know, Yog Darshan has 4 chapters and they are called paths. So, Samadhi Pad, Sadhana Pad, Vibhuti Pad, and Kaivalya Pad. So last week or last time we started Vibhuti Pad, the 3rd chapter. And in the first verse of this chapter, Rishi Patanjali is giving us a very clear definition of Dharana. We saw that how he is explaining the Ashtanga Yoga for us. So Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar. So those are like outer limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. And now the Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi, they are the inner limbs. Or you can say Antaranga Sadhana. So this is the start of it. So he says, confining the mind to an assigned field is Dharana. Okay, so that means the fixing of the mind or the binding of the mind to one place. And it could be the place, it could be object, it could be idea. But make sure that mind is fully bound. Mind loves to run away. Bring it back. Bring it back to that space. So, deshabandhashchittasya dharana. So it's not just the outer mind. He's talking about the chit, the deeper mind. When we practice the outer 5 limbs of yoga, our mind has become somewhat clear, calm, one-pointed. And it has the ability to turn inward with little effort. So effort needs to put when we are doing the dharana. The mind has learned the art of uniting itself with the breath also. And from that union, it receives nourishment also. So we have acquired a highly nourished, energetic, perceptive, and stable mind with this Bahiranga sadhana. So that's why it's very important to practice with the full understanding this Bahiranga sadhana. So with consistent repetition of the practice of dharana, the mind has the opportunity to soak in the power unique to that space where it's concentrating, whether it's Agya Chakra or whether it's Anahat Chakra or any other chakra. That is the space he's talking about. The mind begins to experience that power from inside the space rather than viewing the space from outside. The power intrinsic to that space becomes the mind's own power. This is how the mind realizes its limitless grandeur. We do it consistently, regularly, and with full faith. This abhyas. That's why whether it's a Chaturth pranayam or with the help of any other pranayam or the mudras, we are using all those techniques to control our mind. Because as we saw, Chaturth pranayam gives the mind a taste of the psycho-energetic experience unique to these four specific spots. Opening of the nostrils, the inner centers of the eyes, the center between the eyebrows, and the center of the forehead. This helps the mind to concentrate. So remember, the concentration or dharana involves withdrawing the mind from its train of thoughts and guiding it systematically from one spot in the body to another if you are doing this Chaturth pranayama. Okay, so consistency, regularity with faith, that is very, very important. So now, in the next verse, the second verse of this chapter, he talks about dhyana. Because if we have done dharana for a prolonged period of time, it does take the shape of a dhyana. Dhyan. Automatically it goes towards dhyan. Dhyan is the meditation. A lot of people, they think that first thing they want to do is when they start the practice of yoga, dhyan, or they want to reach samadhi right away. No. It really starts with the yama. Ahimsa satya asted brahmacharya. That's where it starts. Ahimsa. Now let's look at what dhyan is according to Rishi Patanjali. Tatra pratyayaikatanata dhyanam. Tatra. Tatra means there. Pratyayaika. The continuous flow of a single cognition. Dhyanam, meditation. So there the continuous flow of a single cognition is dhyana. So that means dhyan is the continuous flow of cognition toward that object. Continuous flow. The scriptures give a beautiful example of this continuous flow. They say it's like pouring oil from one pot into another. There is a continuous string. It does not break. So that's how the mind is in dhyan. It's fixed. There is a communication between the meditator and the object of meditation, and it's steady. That's what's called dhyan. Dhyan. When would you know that you have really meditated? Because you start with the dharana, how do you know that you have reached the dhyan? There are some signs for that. For example, if you sit for meditation for an hour and it feels that you just sat down for 5 minutes, then you may have been meditating. But when you feel 5 minutes as 1 hour, you are not meditating. You are still concentrating. Time has no meaning in meditation. Space also is lost. You do not know where you are. Because if you break that meditation, all of a sudden, you may wonder what happened to my body. Because even the body is forgotten in real meditation. So that's why they say you are above time and space. And there are other signs of meditation also. In the beginning, you feel so light when you transcend the body. Sometimes as you get beautiful visions connected with the object of your meditation, you feel elevating. Sometimes beautiful lights. Sometimes you may hear beautiful sounds, notes of a flute. These are like various signs you may come across. But do not start imagining. Instead, it should just happen. So you can say that meditation or dhyan is an advanced stage of dharana, in simple terms. Dhyan emerges when the mind attends that object of concentration for a prolonged period of time, with little or no effort. This is the key. Without attending any other thought. So remember, there are three things in the beginning. You, effort, and the object of your meditation. It could be a place, space inside, or it could be something which you call God on your altar. Because Bhagat likes to meditate like that, to have a God's form. Okay? So it could be the object of your meditation, any object, you, awareness of you, and effort. That is a concentration. At the level of concentration, these three. At the level of meditation, effort is gone. You don't have to make an effort. You're sitting, you still realize that you are and the object of your meditation, inside or outside. That is dhyan. No effort is needed. That's why I said sometimes it very easily happens for a bhagat. The love for God. All you remember is you and the form of your beloved. It could be the feet of your beloved, face of your beloved, hands of your beloved. That's all you remember, nothing else. You are meditating. So in its advanced stage, dharana itself is a dhyan. And by implication refers to a more profound and more transforming experience than what is normally defined as dharana. In dhyan, the mind is constantly aware of one cognition. If you are just using your pranic pulsation in that region, you could be aware of that, but only one thing. In dharana, the mind is still somewhat diffused. But in dhyan, the mind is withdrawn from all the details. So in the Chaturth Pranayam, when I told you to bring your awareness, then move your awareness, then that pranayam takes you towards concentration. But when you are not even aware of those movements, then it becomes dhyan. All the detail is gone. Their cognition and awareness, all of that is gone. The flow of a single cognition pertaining to the pranic pulsation is fully uninterrupted. And the mind is not aware of anything other than the cognition of that pranic pulsation, if you're doing it on the prans. Okay? Or if you're doing it, trying to do the dharana on any chakra, then nothing else but the light of that energy center. Or if you are doing it on a form of God, nothing other than that form. So that is dhyana. The secret of transitioning from dharana to dhyana lies in attending the practice of dharana without making an effort. Okay, so first, just keep on making the effort, and slowly you will see, just like anything else in the external world also, when a little child learns how to ride a bike, not to make an effort, then after some times, without even thinking about it, riding the bike beautifully. Or as adults, when we learned how to drive the car, we had to learn, we had to pay an extra effort. But now, without even thinking about it, we can drive. The same thing happens over here. So as soon as we make an effort to go deeper into the practice of dharana, we become aware of the effort. That awareness is itself a cognition. And that sometimes become an obstacle. So that's why consistency in the practice is more important. To roll yourself from the concentration to meditation. Because the object of cognition will pull the mind towards itself. Because there's a power. There's a power in that form of God. There's a power in these energy centers. There's a power in the pulsation of the prana. Whatever you choose, that power will attract the mind towards it. Focusing the mind on a well-defined space corresponding to the region of the, for example, forehead, definitely is the essence of dharana. But then intensity increases and your mind is fully absorbed. You can say that dhyana is marked by the experience of the mind's deep absorption in that spiritual object. Deep absorption. Mind is so well absorbed that it does not see any difference between itself and that object. That kind of absorption. All have merged. All mental imagery has vanished. This is the experience of a meditator. In the state of dhyan, cognitions pertaining to the details of the object of cognition have faded. If you are meditating on the form of your God, your Ishta Devata, you don't even know where it starts, where it ends. All you see is just your Ishta Devata. Mind is still aware of itself as the meditator, though. It is also aware of the object of meditation and the process of meditation. That means I am meditating. I am experiencing this peaceful flow of cognition. You know that. It's like a intermingling, but still staying little apart. From here, we go into the transition to Samadhi. This transition is propelled primarily by the grace rather than our effort. Because effort was at the level of Dharana. Dharana rolls us into Dhyan, and Dhyan into the Samadhi. That is the grace. When we have invested ourselves in the practice of pranayam also, when we watch our dealings with this external world we are living also, we are doing our duties properly, so the fruits of our practice fall into our lap. The only practice needed at this stage is to allow the deeper state of meditation to rise and not to stand in its way. And how does this happen? Let's look at it, the next verse. Tad ev evarthamatranirbhasan svaroopashoonyam ev samadhi. Tad means that. Ev means only. Evarthamatranirbhasan, that is expressive of just its meaning. Svaroop. Svaroop is a defining feature, like a form. Shunyam, devoid. Ev, as if. Samadhi, completely established state of mind. Absorption. Samadhi. When the object of dharana and dhyana seems to have lost its defining features and is expressive only of its meaning, it is samadhi. When Arjun said, I don't know where your form is starting, what is the beginning, what is the end, what is the middle? You are everywhere. He was in a state of samadhi. So when the object seems to have lost its defining features, so as we have seen, dhyan rises out of dharana. When the mind is so fully absorbed in the experience pertaining to the central point of concentration, that it is completely disengaged from observing the details of the object. Because in the concentration, in the dharana state, you are still observing. In the dhyan state, you stop observing. And in the state of dhyan, we are still aware of ourselves as the meditator and the object of meditation. So focus is divided, even in dhyan. But as we continue our practice, the mind becomes increasingly still. The more the mind basks in the luminosity of that space, the more it is drenched in the intrinsic joy of that luminosity. It could be the svaroop of the Ishwar. It could be the beautiful light of the chakras. It is spontaneously and effortlessly drawn to the center of this self-luminous object. And eventually, there comes a time when the mind is no longer aware of the process of meditation and itself as the meditator. So that means there's only one thing left then. First there were three, then two, then only one in Samadhi. So the object of meditation alone is in the full view of the mind. No other cognition stands between the mind and the object of meditation. This is Samadhi. As this matures, the mind transcends even the cognition pertaining to the details of the object. The mind is aware only of the sheer presence of the object. Only my Guru or my God. Only that light, nothing else. So not only has the mind transcended all awareness pertaining to the size and shape of the object, but the qualifying factors of time and space, past, present, future, here, there, somewhere, they all have vanished. The mind has also transcended the awareness of its own existence. So experientially speaking, the mind no longer exists in Samadhi, I'm saying. This state is called Chit Vimukti, freedom from mind. That's a technical term. The mind is dissolved in the self-luminous space. That object has become the mind's locus. Because mind sees itself only part of that. So the purity of the mind in the state of Samadhi is identical to the purity of the self-luminous, that object. Whether it's a pranic Shakti or whether it's a Ishta Devata or it is any chakra. Doesn't matter which one. Idea is to dissolve the mind into something which is higher than the mind, more luminous, to learn how to transcend the mind. So you can say that in Samadhi, the mind is no longer the mind that set out on this yogic quest, but has once again become the mind that began as an outward flow of divine will. That mind. This is the mind the highest reality uses to measure its boundless grandeur. In this state, there is no trace of those fivefold afflictions. Because those afflictions were in the mind. And what were those fivefold afflictions we learned? Avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh. Ignorance, false sense of self-identity, attachment, aversion, and fear of death. None of those afflictions matter anymore. And with the disappearance of these afflictions, the mind's wandering tendencies have also vanished. Because the mind wanders because of these afflictions. Now there are no afflictions. Mind has just found a very peaceful place to sit. The mind is free to see reality as it is, free to abide in its essential nature. For a logical mind residing outside this practice, Samadhi and the mind engrossed in Samadhi seem devoid of all defining features. So by using the word if over here in this verse as if, Patanjali is actually warning us not to be fooled by the lack of defining features. So in Samadhi, what has disappeared are the mental attributes, qualities, characteristics, cognitions, thought processes that block the intuitive capacity of the mind. So what has disappeared is the mind's conviction in the validity of the objective world. What has disappeared is the mind's unwillingness to consider the validity of the reality. Otherwise, this mind keeps on doubting. But now mind has found, no, this is it. I am one with it. I have absorbed myself into the reality. And what has disappeared is the mind's fear of letting itself become an integral part of the reality. The loss of these limitations is the mind's achievement in the state of Samadhi. With the loss of these limitations, the mind has become evarthamatranirbhasan. That's what Patanjali is saying in this verse. Capable of expressing the pure content and intent of the reality in which it is absorbed. Earth-matra-nirbhasan. The literal meaning of earth-matra-nirbhasan is that which illuminates, reveals, or reflects the sheer meaning of the object of concentration and meditation. And over here, the object of meditation is the form of God. So according to the sutra, the state of Samadhi illuminates or reveals the meaning of this luminous field, continuously arising and subsiding in it. It's like a mind just keeps on going there. See, in Punjabi we say gote khana. We just keep on pouring ourselves into it. Keep absorbing that beauty, that luminosity. In the state of Samadhi, the mind is so pure and still and so completely absorbed in the luminosity of that divinity. It does not feel itself as different from the luminosity. That's what I want you to remember. It feels the oneness. Because that me part, I am meditating, has gone now in Samadhi. There's no I different than the divinity in Samadhi. The spontaneous joy that arises from being drenched in this is described as Vishokaha, which we saw in the first chapter, verse number 36. Vishokaha, absolute sorrowless joy. There is not even a little hint of sorrow in Samadhi. Because when we are in the dream state, sure, there are sometimes happy dreams, sometimes sad dreams. And we don't have any control over it. But in Samadhi, we are fully absorbed into that endless joy, the bliss. And it is important to acknowledge that the emergence of Samadhi is not static. It is not an event. It is a process of Dhyana, moving towards Samadhi. Touching it and returning to a state of Dhyana, and sometimes to Dharana. Okay, there could be sometimes you reach that, it could be you are near your Guru, or you are at a place which is fully energetically charged with the vibrations of purity, you will reach there. The next day you want to reach there again, but you can't. Then go back to your dharana state. Okay, so that's why I said it's not static. So returning to a state of dhyan and sometimes to dharana and then moving again towards samadhi. During each such wave in this process, the mind becomes clearer and calmer. You feel wiser every time you reach that space. And spiritually speaking, it becomes sharper. And after each backward slide, has the ability to move forward more quickly. Because you have tasted that. You cannot beg for it, but you can definitely practice it and pray for it. Eventually, the mind is able, in less time, with less effort, to become so absorbed in the self-luminous divine place. So that means it passes the threshold of dhyan and spontaneously begins to experience a samadhi. And to describe this process, Patanjali gave us the next sutra, where he combined all these three. It's not that you have reached samadhi, you don't have to concentrate again. There will be time, then you are sitting and you got to concentrate, you got to meditate, and you will reach samadhi. The technical term for that, he said, sanyamah. Trayam, ekatra, sanyamah. Trayam means the group of three. Ekatra means together. Sanyamah, it's like a technical term. So together, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So together, these three are called sanyamah. This sutra tells us that the practice of moving from dharana to samadhi is a continuum. The precise term for this continuum is sanyam. So in actuality, see, philosophically, we can discuss what is dharana, what is dhyan, what is samadhi, but in actuality, they are practiced together. So every time you sit down on your meditation seat, you are starting with the dharana. Then you glide into the dhyana. And with the grace of the Guru and God, will reach samadhi. It's called sanyam. The mind we possess all day long, we are using this mind. It goes through different states. Sometimes it's disturbed. Sometimes it's stupefied. Or it could be distracted, could be one-pointed, or there are times when it has a complete stillness also. So the practice of yoga leading to samadhi begins with a one-pointed mind. That's why sitting down, doing the dharana is very important. Because the first three states of mind, the disturbed, the stupefied, and the distracted, they are not fit to practice yoga. So the first 5 limbs, which he talked about, first 5 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, Yam, Niyam, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahara, they are designed to help us transcend these three states, the first three states which I mentioned, and cultivate a one-pointed mind. Because these five limbs infuse the mind with the capacity to identify the object of concentration clearly and grip it tightly. So this sanyam word, the literal meaning of a sanyam is what? We use that sanyam word in Sanskrit also, in ordinary Hindi language also. Sanyam means well-rounded discipline. So by using this term, Patanjali is also emphasizing the essence of sadhana. We cannot just wish for samadhi. We got to have a disciplined life. Because success in sadhana depends partly on assessing our physical capability, emotional maturity, intellectual comprehension, and partly on assessing our earnestness and the degree of willpower and determination that supports it. This is like a twofold assessment, which will help us build the course of discipline needed for prolonged and uninterrupted sadhana. We'll start from here next week, because this sanyam word is very important for us to understand, and not to just understanding, but bringing that discipline in our life also. Are we getting up early enough to do our practice? Are we watching our mind all day? Are we watching our language? Are we watching what we intake? Whether it's a food, the liquids, or on the screens what we watch, that's all intake. A yogi of this caliber who wants to reach sanyam or samadhi watches all of it very carefully. And that's why tomorrow the topic which we're going to discuss in our Gita class is very much related to this. Laziness. Are we lazy? Laziness and a sadhak, they don't go together. A sadhak is never lazy. Never lazy. Okay, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. Let's just end this class today, and we'll start with this verse, middle of this verse next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avasheshyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.